Okay, welcome to this webinar. This webinar is about why you should look at multiple legal markets. I believe in my 25 years of doing this, I don't think that there's any job search strategy that has actually resulted in more people getting jobs than looking in other markets. And it is extremely important. I can think of the placements and the interviews I've gotten just in this week alone. I had this morning, I was talking to someone in Detroit, who was in a kind of a narrow practice area, didn't go to a great law school, like a fourth-tier law school, didn't even do that well there, and got an interview with a large firm in Washington, D.C. today, and then another one a few weeks ago in another AmLaw 100 law firm in Atlanta. This particular way of searching for a job is incredibly important. It's something that very few attorneys do, and it's something that in my history of doing this job has literally resulted in hundreds of people getting jobs that they couldn't get in the markets that they're in. And I'm going to talk a lot about this today because it's not as direct as you would think in terms of searching for other markets. There's certain markets that are very difficult to move into. There's certain practice areas that you can move and others that you can't. There's a lot going on. And it's not like you can just pick up and wherever you are and apply to Washington, D.C. or New York. You need to find markets where there's actually jobs. So what that means is sometimes attorneys in big markets can move to smaller markets or move to markets across the country. And so this particular webinar is going to tell you all about it. And the reason this is so important, and I want to really stress like how important this is out of all the placements that I've ever made, and these are thousands of placements, I would say that as many as 50 to 60% are with attorneys that are relocating markets. So not people that are actually trying to get jobs where they are, it's people that are trying to relocate to different markets. And this is incredibly important. And if you understand this and understand kind of the rules that go along with it, take notes. This may be the most influential webinar in terms of your career experience that you ever see. It can change your life. It's changed the lives of so many people that I've worked with, people that couldn't get jobs, people that were stuck in certain cities and firms, people that were blackballed in their existing market, people that just so many people have used this strategy with incredible success and it works. And if you think about it intuitively, you as an attorney, you want to go where the demand is. And so a lot of people are stuck in markets where there's no demand, which is insane. Why would you allow yourself to be in a market where there's no demand for your services and keep trying to apply for jobs there and not get them? And what this strategy does is it makes it much easier for people to get jobs often in their home market, but it's a very useful strategy for people that are in-house and try to go to law firms. A useful strategy for people that are senior attorneys that are trying to get into law firms. It's a useful strategy for junior attorneys or even law students trying to get their first job. It's a useful strategy for people that have lost their jobs or people that are stuck at a certain firm doing work that they don't like. This strategy is like incredible. It's something that literally is the 50, 60% of the placement that I make, maybe more, I would say, are people relocating markets. I had placement I made yesterday, which was someone relocating a market. I had a placement 2 days before that, which was someone relocating the market. And then I had a placement like a week before that, 3 or 4 days before that of someone relocated market. All the placements I made recently are people relocating markets. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going some that because it's a very important topic. The other thing, just to note, this is a live webinar. What that means is after we do the presentation, I will come back, we'll take a quick break for 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'll come back and answer any questions that people have about this incredible topic or any other questions that you have about your job search. But you're very smart being in this webinar today. The people that do these webinars and come to them, it's very interesting because when they become my candidates, they start doing all this stuff and you watch them and they start getting multiple jobs, or they read an article and they listen to me talk about this and they were stuck and then they start getting jobs. And in terms of job search, once you understand this, it can really change the course of your life. The other thing I would say is I talk to attorneys all the time. They say, oh, I have a house, I have my family's in this one market. But the point is that as an attorney, the number one rule, by the way, and this is something that you should write down or just make sure you take it very seriously, is All attorney does is you have to go where the work is. That's it. You have to have access to work. If you don't have access to work where you're at or in the market you're at, then you need to find it. This is the number one rule. It's the rule for partners that have to have business. It's the rule for associates that need to get work. It's the rule for people that are counsel that need to get work. So everyone, like your job as an attorney is to have access to work. There's no other, that's the most important thing of your career. Like you need access to work. So if your firm's not giving you work, you don't have access to work. If you are if your market, the firm you're at is very slow, you don't have access to work. If you get fired, you don't have access to work. If you are in all these things, if you're a law student, just graduated, and you don't have a job, you don't have access to work. So this is the most important thing that an attorney needs to do. If you need access to work and you're not getting it, you should look at other markets where you can get, you need to be working as an attorney. When you stop working, by the way, it becomes very difficult to get another job. It's just people want to hire people that are employed. You would do the same thing if you were a law firm. You would say, why would I hire someone that's unemployed when I have all these people that are employed? I don't have any, and they don't have the doubt that comes along with being unemployed. I mean, or they're not able to get work. So why would I employ? All these questions come up. So you need to employ this service with this idea as aggressively as possible. I talked to an attorney yesterday. He was a fifth-year attorney from one of the top law firms in the country, things like Skadden and things like that. He wasn't there, but in one of those type of firms. And he was looking for a job in Washington, D.C., and there were no jobs there in his practice area. So he opened it up to the whole country, and suddenly he was getting interviewed. He'd been looking in that market for months and was unemployed. So you need to look at other markets, and I'm going to talk a lot about that today, but I really cannot emphasize enough that as an attorney, your job is to get access to work. If you do not have access to work, you are in trouble. So you need to look at as many places as you possibly can to get that, because once you're unemployed or once your whole job search is going to change and you're going to have a hard time. So any search needs to start with whether you're a summer associate looking for jobs, whether you're a first year to 10th year attorney looking for jobs, whether you're senior, whatever it is, but you need to have access to work. Yeah, I'm working with a corporate attorney right now, not very senior, probably in his late 60s. Got him an interview in a firm in the Midwest and in a small town. This firm has all this work. He's never been there, but he's looking at other markets and it's working. So this is what you need to do. And this is why it's so important that you're able to move. And a lot of times people just have these impressions. Oh, I think this market is, would never live in Miami. I've seen it on TV. It doesn't work. I would never live in Texas. It's too conservative. And people have all these ideas about markets and they reach conclusions, and there's different people at different firms, and you cannot reach conclusions about things without seeing them. And when you relocate, your odds are actually increased. One of the reasons they're increased is because if you're relocating in your existing market, a lot of times the law firms may think you're doing something wrong or that there's a problem, and they're less likely to think that often when you're moving markets. The law firms just view you suspiciously, and it's much more difficult to get jobs in your own market than it is to get jobs when you're moving to other markets. People are more open for some reason. And I've seen so many careers restarted and advanced by the strategy. It's just unbelievable what I've seen. I saw one attorney that was a senior attorney that had basically was at a law firm in Chicago as a partner. Then he left to go start a diaper company in the Soviet Union. They did that for 2 or 3 years. It was going well. And then Procter & Gamble came in and had their own diaper company and wiped him out. So he was sitting around for a year looking for a job. He was a securities attorney. He was based in Chicago. He'd never worked anywhere other than Chicago. And I ended up getting him a job in Seattle at what now is, K&L Gates. It used to be Preston Gates and Ellis for a senior that, and it changed his life. Then I had another attorney that was at Hogan Lovells, and he got to be 65 or something, or whatever the age was. Work had dried up, and I found a firm in Texas, like San Antonio or something, that did the exact type of work he did. He'd been searching for a job for a year, and too close and got her job there. One of my next placements that I made not too long ago was a girl that was in Atlanta. She'd been called from the firms there. She'd been fired. I don't know what happened. She couldn't get firms to talk to her there, and then ended up at a very good firm of Palo Alto. This stuff just happens all the time. And it's for people that have trouble often and not relocating. It's just career suicide. People are like, oh, my kids are in school, or I can't work in another market because they come up with all these reasons. And then they become unemployed. And that's even worse. That's worse. You have to take your career very seriously and make sure you're employed and make sure you're employed in the best place. Like this woman I placed yesterday, it was just freaking amazing. Like she'd been basically a solo practitioner for 10 years and had experience in one practice area, but was all over the place and doing all these different things. And incredibly, by relocating market, I got her a job at an AmLaw 150 law firm. Unbelievable. As a temp here, and never worked for a law firm, solo practitioner. This stuff works. And I'm not saying that's normal what happened, but it's insane. Like every day I'm getting people jobs. I had another one like a week and a half ago, someone that was in, I don't know, South Carolina or something, couldn't find a job, and then decided he would look at other markets, and I got him a great job in Wilmington, North Carolina. I go on and on about this, but it drastically increases your odds, and your legal career is a big deal. Having access to work is the most important thing for any attorney. So if you don't have access to work in your market, if things are going bad, there's not a lot of experience you can get in your practice area, then you need to look at other markets. There are hundreds of markets in the U.S. There's the amount of markets is just, there's big markets, there's small markets. The more markets you look at, the more you increase your odds of getting more interviews and offers. I have firms call me all the time. They're like, oh, we're in this small town in Louisiana, and we're doing all this trust in the states work, and we can't get applications. And then I trust the state's attorneys, they're unemployed. And see, they're looking at this firm. And they say, oh, I don't know. And then you tell them, and then they get a job, or it's astonishing like how much this can help you. And one of the things about BCG and our recruiter, is most recruiters will only work in one market. Often that's because they subscribe to these things that tell them who all the associates are at firms, and cold call and cold email. And then they tell, the same service tells them about the jobs, and it costs X amount of money for one market. We actually don't use those services. We go out and get the jobs ourselves. And those services only look at the largest firms. And we look at the smallest firms and everything. And so this system, getting the job at BCG, we use for Canada. I'm not trying to promote BCG here, but I'm just telling you what I've learned. The most effective way to get a job. And I've seen people this morning, like I told you, someone in Detroit. I've seen people in like Kansas City, Minneapolis, Orlando, stalled, sometimes working with mid-sized firms, sometimes unemployed. And these same attorneys, by looking at other markets, may get jobs in New York City or upstate New York. I had a woman a couple of weeks ago that was a patent attorney in Atlanta and had never worked anywhere in Atlanta. And she was senior. She was like 20 years out of school. And I got her a job in Rochester, New York with a great firm. And she'd never been to Rochester. She said, what's Rochester? And so I just want to emphasize to you how important this is and how this strategy needs to be done by every law student, by every attorney looking for a job. It's unbelievable. Now, you may have the qualifications and the ability to get a job in your existing market. And in that case, that's great. But if you look at other markets, you can have a much better chance often of increasing your compensation and all sorts of things. There's certain markets where there's a lot of people like you, but in another market, there might be a lot of demand, and you don't know unless you open yourself up to looking at those markets. And I just want to show you some of the reasons why this should be just a complete no-brainer. If you're in a narrow practice area, you cannot afford not to look at other markets. So, for example, trademark attorney. So in trademark, there's often not a lot of openings in the country. There might be in your city, even if you're in like New York or Los Angeles, there literally might be one opening out of millions of people and thousands of firms. There might be one trademark opening. So obviously, like, you need to look at other markets. You can't just hope that a trademark job comes up. And if the trademark job does come up, there's probably going to be a lot of applicants. and the odds are they're going to be better than you. So it's smart to look at other markets. You have to. The same thing with ERISA, employee benefits, tax often is very difficult. Antitrust, healthcare. I've seen so many healthcare attorneys get jobs when they move market. They might be sitting there in Minneapolis, nothing's going on. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're like a big firm in Texas, or they're the same thing with ERISA, project finance. I'm just telling you how crazy this relocation strategy is. I had one candidate sitting in Dallas or Houston, Texas, doing project finance. He was like 2 years out of school, and he wanted to look for a job because his firm was closed. And so I said, okay, I'll send you to these openings around the country. There weren't many, there was 3 or 4. And I said, and I'll also send you to an opening that I have in Hong Kong. And he said, all right. And so he gets this interview in Hong Kong. They call him and do a Zoom meeting with him where he meets with 2 or 3 attorneys. So he gets his interview with them 3 or 4 days of submitting his application. So he meets with these 3 or 4 attorneys. And then the next day, they send him an offer letter and the email, which a great letter. And he's making salary more than he would make in the U.S. And crazy. People just apply for jobs like all over in these weird places. You can't just apply to a job, by the way, in Hong Kong. You need to do capital markets or project finance, something like that. But if you're in a good practice area, you can look at other markets, and it's insane. You go to town in Hong Kong, you've never been to Hong Kong, and you just have a Zoom meeting and get invited. I had this happen with another woman in Singapore at the moment. It's just, wow, Singapore. Like you go to Singapore, you're working in New York. This is what happens when you look at market. There's often in these practice areas, especially tax, antitrust, like antitrust, there might not be many jobs, or healthcare in your market, there might be not many jobs. But like right now, for example, there's tons, I don't know why, but there's tons of healthcare jobs in Chicago, more than any other part of the country. So obviously, if you try to go to Chicago, there's so many healthcare jobs that there's not enough people in the city to do it. So it would be very smart for you to look at other markets. If you're not in Chicago, you look at Chicago and you're going to have better luck. And so you have to be able to look at different markets. And people and patent attorneys are always placed all over the United States. I had a guy, a couple months ago, and he was working in Atlanta. No, it's Atlanta. I don't know. It's like Pittsburgh or something. Or no, Philadelphia. Unemployed, and then got an interview with a firm in Minneapolis and a job there. And then same thing, never been to Minneapolis. These people that are unmarketable, like patent attorneys, there may be in some markets you could be working in Cleveland, or there might only be 3 or 4 firms or 2 firms that are doing the kind of work you do. And then you start applying to firms in these different markets. San Francisco and Orlando would probably not be good markets for a patent attorney if they're not admitted to the bar, but there's just a lot of opportunity for them, and trademark attorneys, and lots and lots of different markets where you can work. And the big thing is that I don't understand, a lot of attorneys just decide that they never want to move market, and then they end up unemployed, and then it becomes very difficult. People in other professions move all the time. If you're working for a corporation, they may say, I remember my father when I was growing up, we were living in Detroit, and his company came and said, we need you to go to Bangkok, Thailand. I was a freshman in high school. So we moved to Bangkok, Thailand. This is crazy. This is what happens in companies, though. This is what happens, and they move you to different locations. When I was growing up, remember my mom worked for the government in Detroit, and they moved her 2 hours north, another town. So this is just what it does, and people in other professions do this. And so you can't think that you have to be special and not relocate. And you need to look at other markets. And if you're in a slow market, you just can't afford not to look at other markets. And there's things that happen with the economy. So New York, it's boom or bust. When the economy is doing well, there's a lot of corporate openings and finance openings, and the market slows down, then all those openings can go away. And so these attorneys, instead of looking for jobs in New York, they can often work in smaller markets where there's a lot of work. And because things happen more in smaller markets often that they don't in larger markets. I remember I've been through a couple big events. So you had 2001 with this dot-com boom and everything happened. Then you had 2008 and 2009. And we had recruiters in our company that were recruiters in New York, for example, they didn't make any placements for, I don't know, over a year. They were just sitting there like starving. And I said, you can't just look at big firms in New York City because all these firms are hurting. They're all hurting and they're just not hiring many people laterally. You have to look at smaller markets, and they refuse because it's funny with recruiters, but their identity was associated with only working with the biggest firms and so forth. And so that kind of ended up shooting them in the foot. But then I had recruiters in Chicago. I said, you'd have to look at smaller markets. You have to look at the suburbs and outside of Chicago. And they literally had their best years ever during the second recession because they looked at the smaller markets. And the reason smaller markets are good during recessions is counterintuitive. But what happens is the companies that are sending work to law firms will send the work to firms that are cheaper because they don't want to spend much money on attorneys. And so they send people to firms that are cheaper. So the firms often get more work during slowdowns than they might have gotten when the economy was really good. That's one theory I have. Or maybe just they had enough work and they were very excited about hiring attorneys from other markets, from larger markets. I don't know, but looking at smaller markets works, and all sorts of examples. The Bay Area is another one that gets very slow, boom or bust. It's crazy, actually, when you see all the attorneys at these firms, because there's just a lot of ups and downs and things that happen to attorneys when things slow down. They always get slow during downturns. And Texas often is tied to oil prices and oil work because they were doing a lot of fracking and stuff there years ago. And so during the 2008, 2009 recession, it just kept going. There was still corporate and all sorts of things. So if you're an attorney in one of these markets, like the Bay Area in New York, you could apply to firms in Texas and get jobs. But no one thought of that because they thought maybe that I don't want to live in Texas. I'm a New Yorker. I love California, whatever. But this is how you get jobs. I've seen so many attorneys move markets and firms. It works. And you have to move market when your jobs in your home market get slow. You really have to. You have to look at other markets. It's incredibly important, and so few people do it. And what happens, just so you understand, so this is sorry for putting my hands in my face, and crazy people just do this. So your home market slows down, whatever practice area you're in, for whatever reason, the jobs in your market at the kind of firms you want to work at your firm is one of the ones that's slow with all these other firms. What happens is if you're in one of these markets slow, all the attorneys in that market are also going to be looking for positions, and they're going to be in competition with you. So each job could get 200 applications. And unless you're the best attorney in that market, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a job. So why would you try to compete with tons of people trying to get jobs in the slow market, applying to the same firms? That's not a good strategy mathematically or in any way possible. And so you have to think that. You need to be able to think about relocating. Now, there's certainly reasons not to relocate. Maybe your spouse is, I don't know, but I'm just telling you that if your legal career is at risk and you need access to work and you're not getting where you are, you really need to think about relocating. And the majority of our recruiters that I train are always trying to get people jobs in other markets when the markets slow down. Now, that's not to say that you can't get jobs in your existing market, because if you have the right strategy when it's slow, you often can. So that means applying to firms that may not be peer firms, may pay less, all these different reasons, but the firms aren't stupid either. They know that if you take a job with them and things slow down, you're not going to stay. So it's, why would I go on a date with a person when I know they're going to break up with me? It just doesn't make any sense a lot of times. So you may think I'm going to go to work at these smaller firms, they fancy to hire me, but they know that when things pick up, you're going to move, and that's bad for the morale of the people working there. That's bad for clients. And so it's not as easy as it sounds. And often there's no future in the market. You could be in a small market where large companies are never going to give work to the type of firm you're at, meaning your income is going to be limited forever because you're at a firm in a market that large companies just won't give work to. You could be in, I don't know, Oklahoma City, and you might be working at a corporate law firm. And other than some people in Oklahoma, and there are some big companies there, but you're unlikely to get the most sophisticated work or be able to ever make the kind of income you want to make and the type of firm clients are there and all sorts of things. So your prospects can be very limited. I mean, if you are in certain markets, you're going to be limited. You're never going to be able to make the kind of money you want. You're never going to be able to bring the type of clients you want. You're never going to be able to, often not able to bring in business from a lot of different places. And I'm not saying that about Oklahoma City necessarily, but you have to think about the markets you're in, the type of work's there, because the idea is if you go to, and this is for everyone to understand, the larger the firm you're at, or the more sophisticated the firm, or the larger market, or the more demanding the clients are, the better attorney you're going to become. And the better type of matters you're going to be able to bring in. A respected firm for a partner allows them to bring in larger clients. And those larger clients pay more. And those paying more, you'll make more money. So there's all sorts of reasons to think about. But the most important companies in the United States, they always send their most important work to the largest law firms in the largest cities. I was reading the biography of Michael Dell recently, and he was in Texas, and he's talking about how he was doing this big deal. And he hired these incredible law firms like Wachtell or whatever in New York to help him with the deal. And he didn't go to firms in Texas. There's lots of great firms in Texas. He went to firms in New York because that's where the most sophisticated attorneys work in corporate related matters. So you're never going to get to work on those kind of matters if you stay in certain markets. If you're in Nevada or you're in whatever, Alabama, Atlanta, whatever, you're never going to get exposed to those kind of matters. And that's going to limit your career to some extent. If you are in a smaller market, it may make sense to try to work in a larger market because you can make more income. You can become a better attorney because their larger clients demand better work. And so you can be very limited if you're working in that type of market. And relocating can be a very smart thing. If you are a solo practitioner, your work habits are going to be defined by what you think is good. And if you relocate and work in a law firm in another market, which I've done with a ton of solo practitioners, and I used to not believe it was possible, but it definitely is possible, that you can change your career by getting exposed to more important work. And sometimes attorneys don't like working in large markets. New York City, for example, making partner at some of these large law firms is next to impossible, meaning there might be 100 people to join in a class. And at the end of that, there's 2, partner 1, or no. It can be very difficult in certain markets. You may conclude that you don't want to work those type of hours. You may conclude that whatever the end game is, you don't want to be part of it. It doesn't appeal to you. You would rather be in a position where you can come home at night to your family and enjoy your life instead of working in a law firm. So again, not all large law firms in New York are like that, but I'm just giving you an example of what it means to relocate and work in a larger market. You can find lots of peace. Now, I've worked with the attorneys in New York City before that are working with these incredibly aggressive and awesome firms, and they decide they want to relocate to a firm in Syracuse or Rochester, whatever. They make 1/3 the salary, but they get there and they buy houses and they spend time with their kids at night. They're home by 5:30 or 6. You can make all sorts of decisions. And there's firms in Rochester and Syracuse that actually get referred work by major firms because they're cheaper, or clients choose them, and they have big firm attorneys that are relocated there. There's just all sorts of reasons that you can think if you're in a large market or small market to relocate. Another thing, if you get senior in a lot of big firms and big cities, unless you have business, it's very difficult to advance and be a partner. It's also very difficult to bring clients into firms. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was working at a very large law firm in Los Angeles. It was a national firm. He said the clients there that they brought in were the largest companies in the country. And so that was all they did. And there was no way for him to bring in any sorts of client. So he left and went into another practice. He became a personal injury lawyer. He went to Harvard and was at General Melvin, like a very good firm. Sometimes you may conclude that it's not a good idea. And sometimes you may feel limited by culture. I was working with an attorney not too long ago, and she had been like in Philadelphia or something, and then she relocated to a small town, not a small town, maybe 30, 50,000 people in South Carolina, maybe not even that big. And then she realized that everyone in her firm had all gone to the same high school almost, and they came back. And She was single and she felt that was looked down on. And so she wasn't happy there and obviously wanted to move. If the market is very slow in wherever you're at, or it's exploding in another area of the country, it's always a good idea to look at that and see what's going on. I tell attorneys all the time, like, it doesn't hurt you to look at other markets. It's actually very smart. You should be looking at other markets. And then when I tell people to look at other markets, they end up getting interviews and jobs they wouldn't have if they stayed in their own market. Very smart. New York City and the Bay Area, like I told you, can get very busy. I've seen attorneys working, it's pretty funny actually. I had this one guy, this is just crazy, like during when it was the corporate market was booming in the 2000s, and he was at a 3-person law firm in New Jersey. He'd gone to Rutgers and there was nothing spectacular about his academics or anything, but the market in the Bay Area was booming. And so I sent him to a big firm there, and they interviewed him, which is a very good firm, like a top 25 firm in the country, but they couldn't find corporate people. And so they brought him in, and they also brought his wife out, and he got there and they put him up in some big hotel like Ritz-Carlton, some very nice place, and they gave him a suite. And he got there with his wife and couldn't believe it. And there was like candy and stuff in the room, a note from the firm, and it was very funny. So this is what happened. And I haven't seen anything in that sense, but it can be huge. I had another, I can tell stories like this all day. I had another candidate in, I don't know, several years ago, and he was working at outside Seattle, like 30 miles or something. And he got an offer from a big firm in Palo Alto to come there and work as a patent attorney. And they gave him an offer at whatever the standard salary was. And then he said he wouldn't relocate there unless he got a $50,000 starting bonus. And they were like, okay, no problem. And he just kept making more and more demand, like working remotely, all this stuff. And eventually he decided not to do it. But it's very funny how when markets are good, things can happen. And I place people all over the country in different markets, and several times a month, I'm getting people jobs in other markets that I tell them to look at. So I'm like, you have to look at other markets, and they get jobs in other markets. Oftentimes you've never even been there, that they wouldn't have gotten had they stayed in their current market that they're in. I'm just trying to tell you like what a huge difference it can make when you look at other markets instead of just looking at your own market. It literally can change your career. And you can go when the market's hot from a small no-name law firm often to working in a huge market, and it changes your income, it changes your resume, and it gives you more credibility. The solo practitioner I was telling you about earlier, this woman lived in a solo practitioner for her entire career and then got this job in this big firm. Just suddenly her resume looks very strong. She can just say solo practitioner or whatever, and then boom, she's at a major law firm. Changes your income, gives you more credibility, gives you exposure to better work, makes you a better attorney, and often better long-term career prospects. This woman was a corporate attorney. Now she can go in-house, or it's easier to get businesses, all sorts of things. When you do this, make a huge difference. And it's just huge. If you have skills, and I want to tell you another quick story. There's all these law firms around the country. There's small towns where there might only be 2 attorneys, or they're out in California. There's places that are like out in the desert, and they're miles from 150 miles from the nearest town, and then the nearest large town. And then there's an attorney there that retires and calls and says, I just need someone to come take over my book of business. There's basically 2 attorneys in our town. But every time there's a court thing, we go and argue against it. When there's things like this where you can literally go into these other markets and have this huge opportunity that you never would have in other markets. I remember a couple of weeks ago, or about 6 weeks ago, I placed a trust and estates attorney that was in Colorado and New Mexico, and he loves it. And he was unemployed, and it's crazy. Some markets, you may have skills that are very common. You may not, there may be too many people like you. So in this practice areas, like corporate is a perfect example. Real estate's a big one. Bankruptcy. So sometimes those jobs get very active in some markets, but they could be slow in other markets, or the competition for the jobs is too much. There's just different types of practice areas that are common in certain markets. There's lots of patent attorneys and IP litigators in the Bay Area. So if if an IP litigator, can be very difficult to find a job. It's extremely difficult. When I say extremely, like way difficult for litigators, for example, to get jobs in places like Washington, D.C., because there's literally all over. If you walk down the street, probably every fifth person might be a litigator. There's so many litigators there that it's very difficult to get a job. The same thing with like oil and gas attorney. If you're a really good oil and gas attorney in Texas, you can move to other parts of the country if there's work to get a job. The idea is that whatever your practice area is, there's going to be areas of the country where there's going to be more opportunities for you than the market you're in. And so it's very important to realize that. Many times senior attorneys with no business, this is something where I can't even tell you how many lives have changed doing this. Like I told you, I have a guy that's senior right now that was laid off or let go in Boston and been unemployed for five or 6 years, and not 5 or 6 years. He'd been unemployed for several months and is in the process of getting a job in a small town in the Midwest. I had another guy that was very sad. He was laid off and he was in New York and was having an impossible time. He was a senior corporate attorney, having an impossible time getting a job in New York and even the suburbs of New York. And I got him a job with a small firm in Boston. And he had so many issues when he was to get a job. He had one case where he got an interview in Philadelphia or someplace like that. And he was on the train and getting off the train. And then they realized he didn't have any business. So they canceled the interview and made him, so he had to go back. It's just, people have a lot of issues sometimes when they're trying to look at other markets and when they don't have the qualifications to get jobs in many markets. The same thing with senior attorneys. Like if you're a senior attorney, you don't have any business. That's for a lot of attorneys, it's just like you're dead in the water. Like it becomes very difficult to get jobs. And by the way, everyone that's on this webinar, I'm going to give you a piece of advice that I hope you follow. You probably won't, but this advice will change the course of your life. And I just want to give you this little nugget because it's so important. It's crucial. It's what you need to do to have a career that has longevity. It's where you have self-esteem, where you feel like in control of your destiny. When you're in a law firm and you're a junior attorney and you're starting up, you need to find a practice area that you like. And then you need to start spending as much time as you possibly can doing things to build your brand in that practice area. You could write articles, you could get presentations literally and put them on YouTube or you need to do whatever you can to have a presence and start getting business. And the best attorneys out there, the ones that become partners, they actually start spending time. They will give themselves, if they build 2,000 hours, they'll spend another 500 hours or 1,000 hours doing things that help them build business. Because when you get business, the more business you have, the better firm you can work at. The more business you have, the more money you make. The more business you have, the more ability you have to move firms. And essentially, this is the big thing to understand. When you get business, the law firm actually works for you and you don't work for the law firm. The law firm is there to provide an office, secretarial, administrative support, IT support, the brand, all this sort of thing. That's what the law firm exists for. The law firm, an associate and paralegal. So the law firm doesn't exist. You don't work for a law firm when you're a partner with the business. The law firm works for you. I mean, that's how it works. So wouldn't you rather have a law firm working for you than have to go around trying to get business? Because that would be very demotivating and upsetting, because attorneys have to rely on others to give them work. It's not fun. I'm just telling you, it's not fun, and it's not good for your self-esteem. And I see these people all the day, every day. It's hard, very hard. It's not to say there's nothing wrong with them, but the legal profession, very hard. Senior attorneys don't have work, so you need to work on getting work. Now, you may be, again, in a large law firm in Los Angeles or Chicago or Miami, say it's impossible to bring in clients, blah, blah, blah. It's not impossible. Absolutely 100% not impossible. You just need to figure out how to do it. You need to have a goal and you need to do it, because if you don't do it, then you're going to be limited in the money you make. Your self-esteem is going to be affected. You're going to have others give you work, and you're always going to be working for someone else instead of yourself. And working in a law firm with business is you're operating a business, and that business is going to choose the law firm that gives it the best paralegal, the law firm that gives it the best associate, all this stuff. That's the position you need to be in. And I want to just not write it down, never forget what I said, because if you become senior, you don't have any business. You'll remember what I said. And it's so important. It's what you need to do. If you don't do it, you are in trouble. And if you do it, come back to me and tell me you did it, which a lot of people have based on the advice I'm giving you. Incredibly important. Please understand this. Like, people don't want to rely on other people to get work when you get senior. You want to get work. You want to have work there. But again, if you are a senior attorney and you do not have any business, then your role is to find a market that will value your skills, have work to support you, and have the ability to make you partner, not stay in the book of business. So senior attorneys without business, I don't care how senior you are, can get positions when they relocate. And so it's very important. And this is often the only way that senior attorneys can get work. They have to look at other markets. And if they don't do it, they're in trouble. And it's the most important thing that they can do. There are not often market jobs in the market that they're in. And these are the placements that I make all the time. I have so many senior attorneys coming to me and that are dead in the water. And I end up getting them positions in other markets. I like to tell stories, and I know this takes up a little time, but I think stories are very interesting. I had this one attorney years ago that had been unemployed for a few, maybe couple of years. And he had been a partner at a large firm, and he had become a securities attorney. Then he had become a commissioner on SEC, and then when he got there, he married a woman, but he was already married to a woman in Los Angeles. And then all this came out, and he was apparently also a cocaine addict, which, I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. This is just something that I heard. But he came to me and really wanted a job. And when he came to me, he was so nervous, like he was chewing on his lip, and his lip was bleeding because he chewed on it so much. So it was all puffy on one side. He was very nervous. And he told me how he used to own this house on this nice street. But he lost everything in his divorce. And then everyone found out he was this polygamist, and all this stuff came out. And so his life was a mess. And so I was like, trying to figure out what to do with him. And then one day I read the news stories and things and legal publications. And so one day I was reading this news story, and I was talking to this partner who was saying, in the small firm, like, never in my 30 plus years of practice have I seen more of this type of securities work coming. It's overwhelming. We don't know what to do. And so I was like, okay, I'll send him there. And boom, they hired him. And they'd actually never used a recruiter. So they were like, what do we do? How do we pay you? But he got a job there. And then the firm got absorbed into a giant law firm. So suddenly he goes from working and being unemployed for 2 years to working in like a major law firm. I don't know what the law firm was. It might've been like Morrison, Forrester, incredible. Oh, all this stuff had happened. And if he hadn't looked at other markets, he was in Los Angeles looking, and I think the job he got was in the Bay Area somewhere. His life changed. And this happens all the time. I had a risk attorney she worked for this partner, and this is a horrible story. And she was in Indiana, and she worked for this partner. And then the boyfriend of the partner shot and killed her. And so all of a sudden, like, all this work is gone, and she's sitting there in Indiana and doesn't have any work. So she loses her job, and she's sitting around in Indiana, and there's no ERISA work. So I send her to the firm in Texas, and they say, no, we're not interested. And then a month or two later, I get a call from the head of the firm, and he says, she's still available? And I said, yes. And they bring her out, and she gets this job paying, I don't know, $350,000 a year when she was just basically doing nothing. It was like double of what she was making in Indiana. Same thing. Had an attorney that was in Texas, immigration, couldn't get a job. And they got a job looking at a small firm in immigration, unemployed. And they got a job at a big firm in Seattle. And I had a bankruptcy attorney in Detroit that was very senior and couldn't get a job and was unemployed, and incredibly got a job in New York City at not a giant firm, but a smaller one. tax attorneys. Just had a tax attorney in Los Angeles where there's very few tax jobs, and got a job in like Buffalo or something, never been there. All sorts of people, senior patent attorneys, like I could go on and on. But the idea is that relocating can save your life. It can save your career. It can save your career at whatever stage of your career is. You want to be a litigator and you want to clerk in a law and a judge for a judge. You're probably not going to have very good luck if you apply to places in New York City. But if you apply in like Nebraska and all these places, there's going to be fewer applicants and you'll have a federal clerkship on your hands. That's not law firm, but I'm just telling you, there's all sorts of strategies you can do if you look at other markets. And I'm very passionate about this because it changes people's lives. Every day I see it. So every day I get interviewed for people that are looking at markets that they're not in, and they never would have looked at it had I not talked to them. Law firms in your market may not think you're at a good firm. They may only look at people from the best firms or whatever. Or they may not like your law school. They may think, we don't hire from that law school. And they often cannot afford to look at other markets. I used to have, this is just crazy. Like I'd have people from, sorry to put my head on my face again, but it's just so stupid. I've had attorneys like I working at the South Texas College of Law, and they come and I call them and they're like, you can't place me to South Texas College of Law. And I'm like, yes, I can. There's firms outside of Texas that will hire you. And I just saw a candidate from South Texas College of Law get an interview today. The woman I was talking to you about this earlier, I was talking about a trademark attorney in a Midwest market that went to a fourth-tier law school, was Thomas Cooley or something, getting interviews in Washington, D.C. And this is crazy. This is what happened. In some markets, there's just so much competition that it's very difficult to get a job in a major law firm. So an example would be like, you're working in New York and you can't get a job in a big firm. And all of a sudden you apply to a firm. And I saw this not too long ago. Someone applied to a firm in Idaho, like a big firm. I don't remember what it was. It was a good firm like Perkins Coie or something. And they were in a market where they were unemployed and they applied there. And all of a sudden they're working at a big firm and they don't have a big business. And I don't know if it was Perkins Coie, it was a big firm in Idaho. I don't remember what it was. But this stuff works. And once you get into a large firm, you can often get into a large firm by moving from a different market to that market. And you apply to more firms in different cities where there's fewer of you, and you can get into a large law firm oftentimes. Meaning you can be a small law firm or a mid-sized law firm and decide you want to look at other markets and apply to big firms there. And there may not be a lot of people like you there. And so they'll hire you. And it's just an incredible way to improve your career prospects. It really works. And patent attorneys often move markets for them. It's almost a monthly occurrence that they get jobs in other markets and they look at other markets. And it's actually easier for patent attorneys because they're admitted to the USPTO, and it's not as important for them to often have the bar before they relocate. And so if you can't get a job in your practice area, looking at other markets actually works very well. And sometimes people exhaust all the peer firms in their city. They say they have nowhere else to apply. And so they can't look at other markets. I see people, all the time that apply to, they say, I had one guy I was talking to in Washington, D.C. Not too long ago. And he was some sort of corporate attorney. And he had been laid off or lost his job from his firm. And he was sitting there in Washington, D.C. And he'd gone to Harvard and law school. He was sitting there in Washington, D.C., and he says, I applied to all the AmLaw and other law firms, so I've done everything I can. And I was like, this guy's just freaking insane. So he's sitting there, he's been unemployed for 3 months. He went to Harvard Law School, which is great. He did something great for his undergrad too. He might have gone to Stanford, something awesome. And he's sitting there in Washington, D.C., and thinks he's done everything he can. He's only applied to a large firm. This poor guy, and he's dead in the water. Like nothing's happening. And I told him to apply to other firms. No, I like DC. And so he's not looking at other markets, and his career's over. And when I say over, he's not going to get a job in a big firm or even at Washington, D.C. if he just sits there unemployed. And the longer he's unemployed, the worse it looks. If he looks at other places, he'd be fine. But he didn't. And so he literally, I'm talking about a guy that went to Harvard and then law school, did well there, and then went to some great school. I don't know if it was Stanford or MIT, but something awesome, and completely just careered that in the water. Whereas credentials don't matter if you're not interested in relocating. And I've been in this business for so long, and it's just, if you look at other markets, you're going to do well and you're going to have a very good chance. If you don't, you're going to be kind of SOL. It's so stupid. And sometimes people's searches are time sensitive. So here's another thing that happens. So a firm comes and they say, hey, we don't like you. We're going to let you go, but we'll give you 4 weeks or 8 weeks to find a job. And then you can whatever, you're done. Or they'll say, work's really slow here, so we're going to have to let you go, but we're going to give you 4 weeks or whatever to find a new position. Or we'll give you 3 months, but let's get moving. You can get out of here. Or they'll say, we're going to let you go today, but we'll let you keep your voicemail and leave you on the site for a month or 2 months, whatever this is. So these people go out and they think, oh my God, I'm going to try to apply to all the jobs I can find, Lawcross Senior, Indeed, or whatever, and LinkedIn, or I'll call a recruiter, or I'll do this or that. And so they do that, and then they end up just looking in their own city, and then a month goes by when they're dead. They're just unemployed and they haven't done anything. Whereas if they did this massive search and looked at all these different markets and applied to all these different jobs, they would have interviews and have a job and have their confidence. Instead, they're unemployed and sitting there. What's the explanation? Why aren't you working? They must have let them go or not like their work, or their attorney must have quit, just not a good fit. So there's all these questions that are raised. So you need to look at other markets when you're doing things. I used to see law students looking for jobs, and they would pull up these lists of the AmLaw 100 law firms. They might be going to like University of Nebraska College of Law or whatever, and they think that's the only way to search for a job, and then they don't get a job, and like, I'm going to give up. It's just crazy. Sometimes attorneys have bad reputations in the market. They may have done something wrong, or maybe they have worked with other attorneys and other firms and had bad reputations. You can get a bad reputation in a lot of markets. Sometimes it can be for, I don't know, it could be related to performance, or it could be related to, I don't know, doing something wrong, and firms don't like it. I saw one guy who was in a decent sized market, and he lost his job because he came to work with jeans that were ripped, and he was partner with business, and you could see his underwear, not all of it, but a part of it, and it was offensive to a woman. So they fired him. And I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but obviously it was very offensive. I've seen people fired because, they had an affair. I saw one guy fired that had a huge book of business, but he had an affair like 10 years previously with a paralegal, and they fired him for that. So then everyone in the city often knows about these things. So if you're fired, it can be very bad. That's the same thing that happened, for example, with the FCC guy that I told you about. He was a polygamist, and when that happened, he ended up losing his job. So and people knew about it. There's no place he could have gone. But when he went to this firm in the Bay Area, suddenly he was able to get a job, and they knew nothing about it, didn't care. They just needed people to do it. I had a male attorney that sued a senior attorney at his firm for sexual harassment. Everyone knew that he'd sued this male attorney. It was just kind of in the papers and things, or I don't know, it was rumors, but everyone knew about the lawsuit. He wasn't getting any interviews in the city he was in. And then he decided to look at other markets, and no one knew about the rumor in these other markets. And he was able to get interviews and offers. And it's very helpful. So I'm sorry to keep hitting the point on the head, but if that person hadn't looked at markets, his career would have been over. But instead, it's not. So this is like such an effective strategy, no matter who you are, because if you're looking at these other markets, you're going to be very well rewarded. And then if you are relocating, the other thing that happens is that firms will presume that you're a better attorney with fewer issues than if you're relocating within your markets. One of the things that is very helpful, that works extremely well, that results in us making placements all the time, is if you're in some market, you could be working in Las Vegas and you're from Madison, Wisconsin, and you start applying to firms in Madison, Wisconsin, and say, I grew up here, I want to go home and whatever. Or the firms are like, wow, this person's just trying to go home. That's great. We're going to take a look at them, and they're probably going to be stable, and they're going to stick around if they come back to Madison. Law firms like this, and it makes it much easier for you to get a job than if you're not from the area. I had this one girl, very interesting. She was, I don't know, she went to Princeton and with on Olympics or sport, and then went to work and went to law school, like an average law school, University of Illinois or something. It's a great law school, but it's not attached. Well, anyway, I went there and then was working at a I don't know, mid-sized law firm in Minneapolis or something, and decided she wanted to move home to wherever she was from, was like Portland or Seattle. And so I sent her to 20 firms there, and she got 15 interviews because she was going home and she was pursuing the Olympics and everything. But she certainly wasn't getting that kind of reception when she was applying to firms in Minneapolis or Chicago and things like that. No one was really that interested. When she said she was going home, it's like this hero's moving home. It's in the Olympics. And if you are relocating to certain markets, for example, you're trying to relocate from Chicago to New York or something, that you really often don't have to give a reason that you're relocating. You just, the firms they think firm attorneys in New York think everybody wants to work in New York. Of course they want to come here, and that's how they think. So you don't really have to give a reason for relocating to New York. It's just different than a lot of other markets. And it's the same thing working in the Bay Area. People apply to firms that want to be part of the ecosystem here, and I want to be a corporate attorney. So that's very good too. And they used to hire people without the bar and firms and stuff. But now it's, if you want to relocate to certain markets like California and Florida, it's extremely hard without the bar. It's just, they just don't like it. It used to be much easier, but now it's much harder. If the firm has enough work, then and they don't have enough people to do it in that market, then they're going to hire you. And each week, our company makes placements with people that are moving to other markets, wouldn't have gotten jobs if they stayed in their own market. I remember it was very funny. This is very early in my career. I was working with an attorney. He was at a 3-person law firm in some West Texas town. And West Texas is like when you see movies, kind of dust bowls and things, and people in pickup trucks and barren land and things. That's where he was working, which is very funny, like West Texas. And he was working at this firm, and he was making $85,000 a year. And I could hardly understand him. Like when I talked to him, had this Texas drawl that was just like so extreme, I could hardly understand him. And he had actually never left this town. He'd gone to a school in Texas, and he had never left the state of Texas, meaning his entire life, he had never left Texas, the state of Texas. And so he had a graduate degree in some life science discipline, but what happened? So his wife and he decided they were living in this barren town with dust bowls blowing and I don't wish I could paint a better picture of West Texas. But he and his wife decided they wanted to live somewhere where they could do hiking and go up in the mountains and things, and where they could enjoy the outdoors, because they were sick of West Texas. And then again, guy never left the state of Texas. And so he says he wants to apply to firms in Seattle, Colorado, and I think that was it, Seattle and Colorado, because they had mountains and things where he could hike, and maybe Portland, I don't remember. So I sent his application to a firm in Seattle, and they called me a week later, and they said, we actually have an opening in Pittsburgh, not Seattle. We would prefer to have someone like him and work in Pittsburgh. Can he come interview here? Can he interview in Pittsburgh? And so I called him and I said, I didn't get you an interview in Seattle, but I did get you one in Pittsburgh. And I'm sure there's hiking and stuff around there. And actually I think I wanted in Philadelphia. And he said, okay, I'll go on this interview. So he gets on this plane, again, never left the state of Texas. And he flies to Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. He gets off the plane, it's dark, and they take him to the hotel. And the hotel is in the same building as the what do you call it? The hotel's in the same building as the law firm. It's dark. He gets up in the morning. His first interview is like at 10, and the interviews go from like 10 to 5 or something, or 5:30. And then he gets on a plane. Then he gets in the car again, and it's winter or whatever. So they drive him to the airport. It's dark, so he never really sees the city. He gets back to West Texas, and the firm calls and makes him this interview. And he was making 85 or something. I don't remember what it was. And the new job paid 150 or something. And he was like on the phone, and like a Texan guy, and was all excited. And then and then ended up going to this firm, and he rented a townhouse, and he and his wife were raising chickens in the backyard. And this is not normal, like people in Philadelphia raising chickens in their backyard. And the first thing he did was he bought like a Suburban, which is the dream car of people in some places in Texas. But anyway, I looked him up, and 10 years ago or whatever, he's still there. And I think he's a partner. So it's just very funny. His career never would have gone anywhere really in West Texas, this 3-person law firm. All of a sudden, he's working for this like major national patent firm. And maybe it was $250,000. That's what it says here. Yeah, he bought a Chevy Suburban. He was in Pittsburgh and called me, he was happy. And he said chickens. And I guess he got in trouble with these chickens. They were keeping them there and had to break their lease because of the chickens. It was very, very funny. And yeah, he's a partner, large law firm in Texas, all because, and again, probably making 500, 800,000, I don't know. But just because of that, to relocate to another market. And they make assumption, like when someone's relocating to another market, instead of working in their existing market, the law firm will often, if they have personal reasons, they'll like it. Sometimes they want to be close to family, or they may have grown up in them, or they may have family there, or they may have grown up there. So the law firms like that. And the other thing is that people are trying to relocate to a certain market, are interested in it. Law firms will often make the assumption they're going to stay. When you're relocating, you don't look as disloyal as you do. So if you're walking away from a firm in your existing city to another firm, the presumption is that there might be something wrong with your performance, or they may not review other problems. But when you're relocating, the law firm believes that you may want to be close to someone who has their ties to the area. So if you want there's a personal relationship, that's good. They may be relocating because they want access to work, which again, as I told you in the beginning, the most important thing for an attorney is to have access to work. So if you don't have access to work, your career stops. So this is the reason why you need to get business. Like you need to get business because you need access to work. But if you can't get work in your existing market, you don't have business, then it's important for you to potentially relocate to another firm where you're going to have access to work, and then maybe in another market, which is a very smart thing to do. Or you may want to be in a larger, more sophisticated market with a lot more opportunity. So I'm from Detroit, and when I clerked for a federal judge in Detroit, or about an hour outside of Detroit in a small town over a post office, which is fun actually. But so when I was done with my clerkship, there were only like 5 good firms in Detroit, and I wanted to work in one of them. They didn't have any work except for one firm, and that I could have worked there, but I wasn't too interested in that firm. And so I ended up deciding to look at firms in Los Angeles, and there was so much more opportunity there. It was like, when you're looking at firms in Detroit, there's certainly work there, but it's just different. You go to Los Angeles and you get like 20 big firms or 30 big firms. 100 big firms you can look at instead of 5. That was the conclusion. I love Detroit, but there's just more opportunity. Like, what if you lose your job at one of these big law firms in Detroit? Then you have 4 other choices. It's just, you have those reasons for relocating. Want to be in a bigger market or have access to more sophisticated work. And when you're relocating, it doesn't necessarily look like you may be having problems with your existing firms. The number one question, and this is something, again, for everyone to understand, because I do interview prep with attorneys every day, and I see so many people blow this question. The number one question law firms have when you're relocating or when you're moving firms within your existing market is, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving your firm? This is what they all want to know. And so people will say something like, oh, I don't like the culture, or, oh, I don't like these partners that I'm working with, or their work's drying up, or associates are unhappy, all these sorts of things they say. And those are exact wrong things to say. Like, you have to relocate to a firm because you want more sophisticated work, or their billing rates are lower and you can generate business. But the issue is, when you're relocating in their existing firm market, law firms are going to believe that there's something wrong with your performance. You're being let go, or you're going to move when you get there too. And they don't like that. If it looks like you're having problems with your existing firm in your existing city, you're going to be rejected. Law firms want to hire people that look like they'll stick around if they hire them. And they want to hire people that they believe will commit there. And it's valid most of the time. If you're trying to relocate an existing in your existing firm or market, you may be having political problems, or you may just not getting along with people, or they may not like your work. That's often something that happens. I see that happen all the time. Attorneys that bump to one firm or another. I was talking to a woman the other day. It was crazy. Like, she had failed the bar like 4 times. So she decided to go into this other industry, became I don't know what it was. I'm not going to say what she did. Let's say she opened a bar or something, became a bartender or something. Did that for 7 years, then decided to take the bar a couple times again, and eventually passed it, and then gets a job practicing at a mid-sized firm in Los Angeles, which is unheard of. And anyway, so then she gets fired from that firm because her work product sucks, and that's basically what she tells me. Then she goes to another firm, and she gets fired because her work product sucks, meaning some attorneys just don't get it, and they don't do good work. But anyway, she's moved around 3 or 4 times. Every job is 6 months to a year, but she keeps getting hired. I don't understand it. But anyway, but the presumption in most firms is that if you're moving within your market, that there's going to be problems if you move to their firm. And so they, especially if they see a lot of movement, there are people that move every year. So they know that when you go to their firm, you're going to move too, especially in your market. Firms will often reach the conclusion, if you're relocating your market and you don't have good reasons that you're going to relocate, you're going to do the same thing there too. And so they avoid, and when you're interviewing with the firm in your own market, you generally need to say something about your current firm. You don't want to say that. So this is an important list that you should write down that I'm giving you right now. This could save your career if you understand what I'm going to talk about right now. And this webinar will be over shortly, but this is a very important part of it. So if you're interviewing in your own market, there's certain things that attorneys will say, and that will not get them jobs. And so they may say it's not a good cultural fit. And so if you say it's not a good cultural fit, basically what that means is you're not getting along with people there. And so the firm will wonder why you're unable to fit in, and they will presume that you won't fit in other firms either. So I see resumes like all the time. And this is, again, another important point, what you should write down and understand. There are people that can go into any employer, any employment environment, and they will be able to get positions, and they will get a position and they will stay there. There are people that you look at their resume, their first job was for 10 or 12 years, the next job was for 8 years, and then maybe they've been at their current firm for 15. I mean, there's certain types of people that get along wherever they go. Whatever it is politically, they just figure it out. They don't become part of the nonsense of people angry with the firm. A law firm, basically what happens is law firms, to stay alive, they find the bad people that have an attitude problem or aren't doing good work, and they flush them down the toilet, and they bring in people that aren't going to act like that. You need to learn politics in whatever firm you go, meaning you need to stay out of things and just be likable and allow other people to hate the firm or get involved in politics. And that's something you need to avoid. If you participate in that, then you will be convinced that your firm is bad. It will show in your face. It will show in your attitude. It'll show in your work product, and you will have a problem. And people do this, and they do it at one firm, then they move to another firm and do the same thing. It's just not good. If you say you don't have a good cultural fit at your current firm, it's basically saying that people don't like you, or you don't like your firm, or you're not likable. You can't make people, you can't get along with people. You get involved with things that you shouldn't be. You have an attitude problem, may do with the quality of your work. And some people move firms every couple of years and say it's not a good culture, it's not a good cultural fit. And so the other one that people say, and this is a very important thing to avoid. So you don't say it's not a good cultural fit, because that will raise questions about you. You also should not say there's not enough work. This can be often a reasonable reason for looking. It's why you should look. But if you say there's not enough work, and you're at a law firm that generates hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue, or over $1 billion, and the law firm's been around for 100 years, and you say there's no work, there is work. Sometimes there's not a lot of work, but the law firms will always keep people busy to do the best work, and they will not keep people busy that don't. So if you're not getting work, it's a sign that, and again, I'm talking about huge law firms and so forth, it's a sign that maybe you're not the best associate. And that's a statement about the kind of work you do. So you need to be very careful. Good attorneys that do good work are always given work. They figure out how to keep them busy. They want them to stay there. So if you stop talking about that, you have to be very careful. Law firms may presume that you're not a good attorney, and maybe you don't have the political skills and you're not able to get work. Again, the most important thing for an attorney, I'm going to say this again, is to have access to work. So you have to figure out how to get work in your own firm. You have to figure out as a career strategy how to bring in work so you have work. You have to move firms if you can't get work at your existing firm or there's not enough work. But access to work is the most important thing. And you have to basically butter up as many, if you're an associate, as many partners, or if you're a partner without work, you have to butter up as many people as you possibly can so they give you work. That's extremely important. You cannot create issues with any partner in any law firm you go to, because if they won't give you work, you need to get work. You need to, as a junior, mid-level, senior associate, you need to butter up and find the people that have the most work, and you have to get close to them so they keep you busy. And you have to do the best work for them. If you don't have work and you're at a firm that everyone knows has a lot of work, that means that you're not good enough, or you don't have the ability to generate work in your own firm, which also means, by the way, that if you become a partner or you're considered for a partner, that you don't have the ability to do that either. You just have to be very cognizant of what you're saying at each firm. You can say, this is a good one. But you could say an important partner that was the source of all the work left. So often when that happens, the best partners will always take the best associates because they need people to do work. That is a sign of weakness. Like everything you do when you're talking and interviewing to firms, if you telegraph weakness, then that's not good. Again, if you're an attorney representing someone in court, you don't want to telegraph weakness. The job of an attorney is to not telegraph weakness either for themselves or for their clients. And this is another thing I want to tell you about, telegraphing weaknesses. So you may have substance abuse problems. You may have had substance abuse problems in the past. You may have been divorced for cheating on your spouse. You may have had a DUI. You may have gotten suspended from college for plagiarism. You may have all these dark things in your closet in your history that you have, or you may be like some sort of hookup master and go out and hook up every weekend. I don't know what you are, but if you start telling people in your own firm about this stuff, it's a weakness and they will come down on you hard. I've seen people, I had one woman that was was at a giant firm, and then the partners in that firm were moving her over to another giant firm. When I say a giant firm, man, I'm talking about really freaking awesome firm. I don't know what it was. I don't remember. Could have been like Pillsbury. I don't remember. Really great firm was moving over to this other awesome firm. And they were bringing her over. And then the other awesome firm just looked at her social media feed, and it said something like, pushing this out for the next few years, and then I'm going to quit and travel or something. I don't know, but something that shows that she wasn't really committed to a long-term career in the law. And so all of a sudden, this firm that was going to bring her over decides that not only they're not going to bring her over, actually, I think they're in the process of bringing her over. So she quit her job at the current firm. And then they saw that and they just let her go. They did not let her go, but told her she can go over to the firm. And so again, that's something that's telegraphing weakness. You cannot telegraph weakness. You have to be careful. Health problems that could interfere with your work, or problems at home, or all this stuff can really get you. I remember I was working with one woman, and she had, met some guy when she was staying at a Club Med or something in the Caribbean, and didn't hook up with him because she had a boyfriend at the time, but she hung out with him for a few days or whatever. Then anyway, broke up with her boyfriend, started this job at this law firm. And then she was working there for 6 months. And then she thought she was friends with this partner, because this partner would talk to her about her dating life and everything. She thought she was friends. But anyway, so she brought this guy, flew out to visit her in Palo Alto, and they spent the whole weekend hooking up. I'm not going to give you the details, but something like 10 times they did the romp around. Anyway, so she came and told the partner all this. And the partner was absolutely mortified. And she was working in I think she was a trademark attorney and working in trademark law. And there were no trademark law. There were no trademark jobs in Palo Alto at the time. There's maybe one in LA. Partner was just appalled by what she learned and literally stopped giving her work. And it just didn't, from a moral standpoint, I don't know, she was whatever, thought this behavior was outrageous. So this woman literally lost her job because of this. And then not only lost her job, but the only job she could get where she couldn't get another trademark job. And the only job she could get, she got a job maybe in an insurance defense firm, didn't want to do that, and then ended up working in a completely different industry, never practiced law again. And this is by some weakness. You got to be freaking careful. You do not want to tell. If you tell somebody something about you personal, they will tell everyone. Everyone will know. Anything that you do, that you let people know about, even if you think they're your friends, they will tell everyone, and they will craft stories about you that may not be accurate, and you will get a reputation of something. People, you may decide you may be at a firm where there's a lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans, and you want to be very much on the side of that. And maybe the people at the firm are on other sides, or I don't know, or they have different types of political beliefs, and you may be for Israel and against Palestine, or for Palestine and Israel. You just don't get involved in this crap. If you get involved in it, it's not going to help you. You have to be very careful about all this stuff. And I'm sorry for going into so much detail and spending so much time on it, but I've seen so many people have all sorts of issues. The law firms want to be very careful. So a lot of times people say they want to do more sophisticated work. And actually, I think that's a pretty good reason for leading law firms. So it's a very acceptable one, something that a lot of people do. But the law firms may think that many times you're a diva, but will only work on the most sophisticated projects. I saw one guy's career end. He had got a job at a very good firm in Silicon Valley he was going to do white collar work. And they didn't have, when he got there, they had some white collar work, but they lost it. And so they put him on commercial litigation. And he literally, this is a job, he refused to do commercial litigation. He said, I'm not doing commercial litigation. I go to do white collar work. So he sat there and he didn't work, and they fired him. And because he was a diva, I do some work. Remember, the most important thing in a law firm is to do more sophisticated work. To be busy. If you're doing corporate and all of a sudden you want a IP litigation case, and they want to have you do some real estate because that's the only thing they have, that's what you need to do. And you want to stay employed. You just need to be very careful. You can't say that you only want to do something. You have to be very careful. Saying you only want to do sophisticated work, the law firm, you don't want the law firm to believe that you're not going to work or quit if you're not getting work. You need to look like someone that'll be part of a team and will stick around and will do what's necessary for the people that are paying you. And I just want to make one quick point, and we're almost done with this slideshow, but the most important thing is, as any attorney, is to respect and revere the people that are giving you work. That could be, if you're a partner, you respect and revere the people giving you work. I know partners that call up their clients once a week just to check in and see how they're doing. Once a week, we respect and they revere them for giving them work. I know you have to respect the people giving you work. That is how you stay alive. You stay alive by getting work as an attorney. So you don't stay alive if you don't get work. So anything that you do in your current firm, you want to take sides in politics, fine. That's going to help. That's not helping you stay alive. Might, but it's the right people, but it's very, very risky. You want to be critical about your firm, write stuff on different blogs, or get involved and take it real seriously. Like your firm's going down because it's been around for 50 years and something bad happened, and your whole job is to have access to work. That's it. Like an attorney needs access to work. So if you poison the well where you're at and you don't have good relationships, then that firm won't have you back. That you will not have people that when you leave that firm, if you leave, that become in-house counsel and stuff and give you access to work. If you get a bad reputation because you did something, that's going to affect the access to work. All this stuff is just incredibly important. I had one attorney, I like these stories because I think that they're very useful. I had one attorney that was at this major law firm in Los Angeles, and he was like days from making partner. Like they had already decided he was going to be a partner. And so he was asked on, I don't know, he went to work on a Sunday or something, and he came to work on Monday, and a partner that he was working for said, "Did you send this letter to the client or to the opposing counsel, whatever it was?" And he said, "Yes, I sent it yesterday." Then after that, he went into his office, and a few minutes later, he sent the letter. The partner, whatever, went out of the system and figured out that he had lied. And all of a sudden, just because he lied, major firm, this firm had a vendetta. They fired him. They were very angry. And not only that, but they told other attorneys and that he had other firms that he'd lied. And so I was representing him, and so I sent him to a bunch of firms in Los Angeles. And this one firm came and they said, "Hey, this is really bad. This guy, I don't know if you know what happened, but I didn't think it was that serious. But the guy ended up having to go back home and work in St. Louis or something. He couldn't get, he was blacklisted." Access to work is very important. You have to do whatever you can to have access to work. You have to do, this is your job as an attorney. Your job is to make sure you always have access to work. That's it. You are not, when you go to work at a law firm, you're not supposed to sit there and think, I need the highest salary and everything. You need to get work. You need to get trained. You need to develop relationships. You need all these things to have long-term access to work. The most important thing. So another time attorneys will say something like, there's not enough opportunity. And this particular one is a minefield. It can mean a lot of different things. It can mean that you're not doing a good enough job to advance, or you don't have enough business, you don't work hard enough, or some other reason like that. So remember, anything you do as an attorney that telegraphs weakness, meaning you say that the culture, you say there's not enough work, you say all these things, there's not enough opportunity. The idea is that for some people there probably is. And at every firm, there's opportunities for the best attorneys. So your job is to create opportunity and to be incredibly valuable to your law firm. So they have to advance. You have to be someone that looks like they have opportunity. And if you start talking about that, law firms are going to think it could be issues with you. So you have to be very careful about saying anything about that. They good. So you just have to be very careful with that one too. And this, again, it's a minefield. You have to be someone that looks like they're capable of creating opportunity, meaning certain attorneys will always get opportunity and others won't. So you have to be someone that looks like they're part of something that can be part of that opportunity. Or it could signal that if you do not get access to the type of opportunity that you think you're entitled to, that you will leave the firm. And so that's not good. So a lot of times people will also say that they're evaluating their options and they feel like it's a good time to look around, that they're junior and that's something that they need and want to do. If you say that, it usually means that, sorry, I don't love the background. It usually means something to do with that you're something else may be wrong, or you're going to do the same thing in an existing firm. Often when you talk about things like that, it may look like you've been asked to leave. That's a big one. It could mean a lot of different things, but that too is often not the best thing. Because mean you're not doing well at your current firm, or you're going to say something like that. Sometimes this is another big one. People will say that morale low at their existing firm. They'll say everyone's unhappy and so forth. And people will often say that in interviews. And it means maybe that you're not someone who's on the side of management, and instead someone who follows kind of groupthink and so forth. And so people will always interviewing you will keep that in mind too. And then they'll talk about commute. That's another one. So they will ask, why did you take a job on this side of town? Why did you move? How serious would you take your career? And attorneys are always expected to take their career very seriously. And so you have to be careful about that when you're relocating your current market. This is concluding all this. This can be one of the saddest things that I see as a recruiter when I see careers die. You go to law school for a reason. You get a degree for a reason. You want to work as a lawyer for a reason. And it makes no sense for you to often stay in your market because you can't look at other markets. You absolutely have to look at other markets. There's no other choice. And you're welcome to, you should broaden your horizons and look at as many opportunities and prospects as you can. You really need to. And I've told you a lot of stories today about this and why I think this is a good idea. I've told you lots of stories about people whose lives have changed by doing it. And so I can't tell you like a better career strategy for moving than looking at other markets. Especially if you're in a niche practice area where there's not a lot of opportunity or there's everything is slowing down in your own firm. We just need to be very careful. Okay, so we'll take a quick break just for like a minute or two. I apologize, it was such a long webinar but I thought it was very important to cover all this. I think this is very important information. We'll take a quick break, and then when I come back, we'll answer questions, and then we will and then I will be done. So the idea is you want to ask questions really about anything that any questions you have about this webinar or anything related to your career. Okay, so give me 1 second. We'll do questions. Okay, my practice found that as a senior attorneys fully focused on my own local market. I'm starting to feel the pinch of the global growth opportunities. How can I effectively explore other markets without spreading myself too thin or whatever it is, make my client base? I don't know what type of work you do. You could be doing personal injury. You can be doing corporate real estate. To a lot of times, it just depends on your practice area. Certain practice areas, it's going to be very difficult for you to move. So I would recommend, it depends on your practice area. But if you're finding limited growth opportunities in your local market, there's a lot of different things you can do. One thing would be, trying to look like a good attorney in your practice area in a way that you can attract work from other markets. That's one thing. Or you can look at other markets in the United States. Let me just see if I can open something. Give me 1 second here. Go, because I'm going to pull up one thing. So if you look at a map of the United States, I always like doing this and showing this to people when I'm working with them. Let me show you here on a big map. Okay, so the map of the United States is like huge. I see people in Maine moving to different places. I see attorneys in Ohio, like looking at Wyoming. And so there's really opportunities pretty much all over. It's Kansas, another one. So looking at different markets is just, I don't know about jeopardizing your place, but if you're a senior attorney, there's always going to be jobs in other markets. And your odds of getting a position, by the way, are much better when you start looking at places where there's not a lot of attorneys. So you can move to Missouri and Arkansas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, all these places where there might not be demand in your existing market, but there is in your market. I remember not too long ago, I had a partner that was losing his job in Chicago. And he applied to firms like in Taos, New Mexico or something. And there's actually big firms there. At the time, it was like Mayor Brown and all these things. And he ended up getting a job at one of those firms. It was funny, but there's just, there's all sorts of markets that you can move to. Yes, this is a good question. So it's just a general type of question. So what are the main traits that big law firms look for in candidates other than previous experience in large law school? Okay, so large law firms, honestly, if you went to let me just look at law school rankings here real quickly. I'll do that now. U.S. News law school rankings. So this is, I'm going to tell everyone now. So this question basically is, what law school that you go to, can you get a job in a big firm? So let's go over that. So of course, Stanford, Yale, all these sorts of things. Actually, Yale can be difficult to get a job in a big firm because they assume we're going to leave. But Stanford, I was ranked Duke, Harvard, and Virginia. She was ranked 4. Wow. Columbia, NYU, Northwestern, like all these top law schools you can get a job fairly easily. But it's interesting, like when you're starting to look at these schools, so when you start getting down to like not as easy, Georgetown, there's a lot of people that come out of Georgetown. So it's a great law school, but it can actually be, you can see how many people are there. It can actually be quite difficult. Minnesota is difficult to get into a lot of large firms from because it's where it's Texas is okay for Texas, but it can be hard to get stuff out of there. So as you start going down in these rankings, like University of Georgia is ranked 20. I don't know that I've ever placed someone from University of Georgia in a large firm. I think that UNC is actually regarded, the University of North Carolina is regarded. We'll start getting down in these firms like Notre Dame, South Carolina, BU. It becomes Ohio State. Like these are firms where it becomes very difficult to get into large firms like Texas A&M, and BYU is good for people, a large Mormon community in different cities in the United States. So that can be good. And so I'm just reviewing all these schools. University of Florida, difficult to get into large firms. And so as you start going down the list, I don't see people from Florida and Arizona. Washington, I see people, but Arizona State, not many. U of I, some. Iowa is interesting. You sometimes Cravath recruits from there, but a lot of these schools, as you start going down, fewer and fewer people. I would actually rank these schools much differently based on where people get jobs. That actually might be interesting to do. But Indiana, so you start going down this. So I would say that the easiest schools to get jobs, the top law firms if you go to, tend to be, Duke, Harvard, Penn, Virginia, Columbia. Yeah, these are all like these top schools. I think these schools, like the top 9, are the easiest. If you go to one of these to get a job in a top law firm, if you do well enough there. I would say Northwestern too. Michigan's probably okay. Berkeley, it's okay. CLA becomes harder. So when you start getting down below 12 and you start going to these firms, it becomes much harder. So the school you go to is important. But what I want to point out, and so this is very interesting, like people from these schools get jobs all the time. And I see people from Pepperdine get jobs in large law firms. I don't see people from University of Tennessee. But these schools, like if you go to them, I don't see people from Wayne State getting jobs really outside of in the big firms. I was working with the one that went to Wayne State. She was first in her class and didn't have the best personality, but wasn't getting jobs in large law firms outside of Detroit. Anyway, so the idea with the law firms, the largest law firms will hire people from the best law schools, typically like the top 12, but you can still get a job in a major law firm regardless of where you go to school. The logic of that is that what large law firms look for, they look for your practice area, and then they'll often look at your school, look at your grades, et cetera. But the most important thing is that a large law firm is looking for when they're hiring laterally is they're most interested in your practice area and then the quality of the firm you're at, and then also what else it look at, and then how difficult it is for them find people to find people to work there. So it's interesting. I remember, let's look at law school rankings again. So let's see, Pace Law School. So this firm is ranked 136. I remember and it's not a highly ranked firm that you normally wouldn't see people going to best law firms. I remember when the market was very busy for corporate attorneys in 2000, 2001, all these people, I saw people from Pace University Law School working at places like Sherman and Sterling. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. But that's a very good firm. And it was very good back then. And I couldn't believe it. But that was because there just were not enough people to do the work. So the main thing that the law firms are looking for when they're hiring laterally in large law firms is they are concerned about your school. But what they're really most concerned about, and this is always the case, is they're most concerned about your practice area. They're most concerned about the quality of firm you're at. They're most concerned about how difficult it is for them to find people to work there. And then another one is your business when you start becoming more senior and how much clients are willing to pay for. There's some firms that you'll never get into. So the firms like some of the top New York firms and top firms in Los Angeles and the best names, Gibson, Donald, Melvany, Morrison and Forrester, Skadden, Cravath, whatever, Sherman, Sterling, things like that. Sure. There's certain firms that if you don't start out at a really good firm, you'll never get into. But there are firms that you can get into if you have business that will hire you. And when you get more senior, lots of big firms, they don't care where you went to law school. Then you can often get into big firms as an attorney if you get experience in a very rare practice areas. You have things like patent, just ERISA. A lot of people do ERISA, lots of practice areas you can go into. Patent, ERISA, let me just see here if I can pull up some practice areas in BCG. There's a lot of practice areas in real estate where there may not be a lot of attorneys with your background. And because of that, you can get into large law firms if you have a lot of experience in that practice area. And they're more concerned about that than where you went to law school. I remember I had this candidate years ago, and he'd gone to University of Utah for law school. I don't know what it was, but not a top law school. And he was working at a firm in Boise, Idaho. It was a good firm. I forget the name of it. And he wanted to move to Los Angeles, and he called me, and I didn't think like much would happen. I thought that he would not get a job, but I decided to represent him anyway. And the firm was at a good reputation in Boise. I applied him to all these firms in Los Angeles, and he got all these interviews. I couldn't believe it. And I got in my car and drove him around, helped him look at neighborhoods and houses, and he got jobs at all these big firms. He ended up taking a job at a firm that I didn't get him a job at, but he did very well. He's still a partner in big firms. And so but it was a practice area. The firms needed real estate. And so they brought him in and he was at a good firm. And so he got into a top AmLaw 50 law firm. So it's often the practice area that you choose, that you're in. Let me see if I can pull up some practice areas in BCG just so you can see. You can talk a little bit about practice area that you're most likely to get jobs in if you decide when you become an attorney. Or when you are an attorney, what kind of practice areas are they most likely to get jobs in? Okay, so this is like our internal database where we look at things for candidates. Let me just make sure I get the practice. Where are the practice areas here? Sorry, I'm looking for one. I want to show everyone the practice areas where you're most likely to get a job. Okay, so this is practice areas. Okay, what kind of practice areas are smart if you didn't go to a great law school and you want to get a job in a large law firm? Alcohol, beverage law, there's not a lot of those jobs. Antitrust and competition, almost impossible. But if you do litigation, that's possible. Art and museum law, that's not just something that large law firms do. Bankruptcy to smaller firms is going to be very difficult. Cannabis law, yes, they don't know as much now, but it was a big practice area a couple of years ago. So yes, you can get into a top law firm sometimes if you do that, because there's not a lot of people if you didn't go to a top law school. Construction law, typically large law firms don't do this because the fees aren't as high. If they did do it, then if you do like a developer and that sort of agreements, you might have a shot. Corporate is really one of the best if you want to relocate, go into large law firms. So you have all these kind of practice areas within corporate. So if you get experience doing that, that's very useful. What practice areas can help you get into a large law firm? Investment management, yes, if you did, that's a good one. Compliance and contract, corporate general, sometimes, but the largest law firms typically are more specialized. So if you were doing M&A at a smaller firm, didn't go to great law school, that's one good one. Private equity is a good one. Securities and capital markets are a little bit more difficult because in most cases you would need training in a really good law firm. Tech transactions, no. So people used to think, that they're really good practice areas, but no. So in corporate, if you didn't go to a top law school, you want to work in a top law firm, you should get experience, and you can move to a large law firm if you get experience in these practice areas and the market's good in whatever area of the country you're at, or you want to relocate. So corporate asset investment management is very good. Corporate M&A is also very good. And all these practice areas, by the way, you're much more likely to get a job in a large law firm as someone that didn't go to the best law school if you get experience in one of these practice areas and one of the ones that's well-defined. So if your resume says, hey, I do nothing but corporate asset investment management, you're going to have a much better chance of getting the job in a large law firm if you say, hey, I do compliance, I do M&A, I do private equity. Large law firms and their clients hire people that are in one practice area and experts, because if you go to someone that does only private equity, they're going to be a hell of a lot more effective and know a lot more and be better with their time and stuff than if you hire someone that does M&A and private equity. So M&A is a good one, private equity, technology transactions, securities and capital markets, no. And you probably wouldn't be doing securities and capital markets at a small law firm anyway. And then venture capital emerging companies, another one. Criminal law defense, no. Data privacy, no. People think that's a great practice area to go into. It's a real dud. It's not what it's cracked up to be. So many people now are going and getting these certifications and stuff. I see people get interviews in it, but it's a much harder practice area. Everybody and their brother and sister is trying to get this and go into it. It's just very difficult. Education law, large law firms typically don't do it, but sometimes they do. It can be very good. I think education law is actually a very good practice area to go into. If you go into this practice area, you're going to have there's not a lot of people that do it. Doing this practice area, I think, is very smart. If I was a young attorney, this is something I would think about doing. I've seen lots of people have very good and long careers doing it. It's a very smart thing to do. You can do educational defense. You can do plaintiffs, which is a very good thing. And you can sue school systems and things. I had a funny experience though. There was this guy that I knew, and he had done all this stuff. Like he'd started a software company and for attorneys, and then it failed. And then he went and sold insurance and then did all these different things. And I hadn't seen him in 3 or 4 years. And then one day I was in this store, like waiting for my food, and I was walking secondhand furniture or something. It was next to a restaurant where I was buying food and waiting for it. And anyway, I walked in there. He told me he was doing plaintiffs suing schools for reasonable accommodations and stuff. He's always had an angle for getting money, but it's just education all around. You could practice area. Law firms, large law firms typically don't do it, but it's a very smart practice area. Energy, oil, and gas is a very difficult practice area to get into. There's not a lot of jobs around the country. Staying employed in the long term is very difficult. I have attorneys that do this, and they certainly get jobs, but it's much harder than in other practice areas. And it's also very difficult to move to larger law firms. If you do want to move to a larger law firm and you do this, you're always better off doing transactional related stuff. And that's a rule that I would say for all attorneys, is that you want to do anything that you can do this transactional nature. You're always going to have a much better time or a much better chance usually of getting the jobs than in other practice areas. So energy, oil, and gas are very difficult to transition into larger firms. But the nice thing about, there are firms like Baker Botts and things that do it, but the nice thing about energy and electric and stuff is that you can, the fees that you get, the ability to attract clients is much better than the practitioners. So I've seen a lot of attorneys do this and they have a very good ability to attract clients. Entertainment, new media, another big one, but this is almost impossible to move to large law firms. In LA, I've seen very few people do it. Very few people. Most of the clients in IP are not that big. Like the studios, they don't spend a lot of money. The actors don't spend a lot of money. But if you did want to do it, getting experience doing transactional work is the best. Or you can certainly do IP, but anything to do with transactional, meaning putting together deals where you're raising money for clients and so forth, you can do that sometimes in a smaller firm. Would do a larger firm, but it's very difficult. It's just not something that happens a lot. So sports law and media law and everything is a waste of your time if you want to do that. And I'll try to go through these very quickly because I know I'm spending a lot of time on it. I know people probably, this is a lot. Environmental land use, very difficult to move to larger law firms. But the best practice area that if you would want to do that under environmental would be land use and zoning. That's, if you get experience in a smaller firm and you want to move to a larger firm, that's really the best practice area to do it. There are some work and litigation and so forth, but it becomes much harder to move. And you can, if you do environmental litigation, defense is the best one. Anything to do with ERISA is very good to move to large law firms, and regardless of the school you went to. That is a very good practice area if you want to move to a larger law firm, is to get experience in ERISA, regardless of where you went to law school. If you do well in ERISA, you can get an executive compensation. There's not a lot of people to do it, so it's good to move to large law firms. Family law, surprisingly, there's some large-sized law firms that do it. You can move in family law oftentimes to larger firms. If you get experience in that and you don't go to the greatest law school, you can do it. There's some large firms that do it, but it's better to have your own career doing family law than that. In terms of finance, all these practice areas typically are going to be done by larger firms, but if you wanted to do finance with banking, that would help you move to larger law firms. There's not small law firms really that do project finance. Public finance could be like bonds and things. You can move in that. Structured, and then transportation finance, you really have to be at a large firm. Food and drug law, yes. If you get experience doing that, you can move to a larger firm, but there's not a lot of firms that do it. Franchise law is difficult. General practice, no. We're almost done with these. And then government law, government contracts is probably the best. The rest of these practice areas, you pretty much need to have gone to a large law school. Health law, you can move to larger firms all the time, but mainly you want to do transactions. Litigation can be good. This is a very hot practice area. So if you're a new attorney and you want to go into a practice area, health law is very good. Immigration, no. Most large law firms do not have immigration. So if you do that, you're not going to work in a larger firm, but it's a good practice area. Then insurance, yes, you can move to a larger firm if you didn't go into a great law firm, that'd be a great law school. That would be regulatory and insurance coverage if you have experience doing that. Insurance defense, insurance plaintiffs, trucking, all these large law firms do not do this work. So, but insurance defense is a great practice area to be in because you'll always have a job. IP, yes, you can move into large law firms if you don't have experience in the best firms. Anything to do with patent is pretty much where it is. IP litigation, not really, but patent, you can move to larger law firms if you have anything to do with patent, regardless of where you went to law school, often within reason, you can move to large law firms. Most patent attorneys, by the way, they come out of law school, they don't do that well because they're engineers, often taking classes at night, but they get into small law firms, get experience, then move to larger law firms. Patent is one of the classic ones where it doesn't matter where you went to law school. Trademark and copyright, yes, you can, but there's just not enough jobs, so it's difficult. Labor and employment, yes, you can. Doing employment defense, counseling, and labor-related stuff, not wage and hour. But the problem with employment law is most large law firms don't do it because there's not enough money. And then in terms of litigation, really all these different types of litigation, ERISA litigation, yes, all the rest of the types of litigation, there's typically, they expect you to, with healthcare law, it's okay. They really expect you to have gone to a good law school in terms of doing litigation. Some of the practice areas that might be okay for litigation be trust in the states. And on that, municipal law, most large law firms don't do it. But if you do municipal law transaction, real estate, yes, it's a classic one where people can go into large law firms or they get experience in smaller ones. Happens all the time. Doesn't matter where you went to law school, pretty much all of them. Tax law, it's very difficult to move. Telecommunications is difficult. Trust in the states, yes, you can move to larger law firms if you get experience in it. This is a very active practice here at the moment, but the only ones where you'd be able to get the jobs would be estate tax planning and trust in the states. So I'm sorry for going into so much detail on that. I wasn't trying to bore people, but I did want everyone to understand how you can move to, if you don't start out in a big law firm or you're not working in a big law firm, or you didn't go to a big law school, the practice area that you're in. And the practice area you're in typically will determine whether or not you can get into a large law firm. And the final lesson is that most of the practice areas need to be transactional in nature. Those are the easy ones. The problem, and typically those are the ones where you can get them. And then the more kind of obscure ones like patent and ERISA tend to be the easiest. So I hope I answered that question. This next question. In my current market, there's a saturation of attorneys specializing in my field. How can I identify which legal markets have a higher demand for expertise? What steps should I take to transition to those markets? Okay, so this question, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. If there's a saturation of attorneys in your market, you need to apply to markets where there's not a lot of people like you. So typically the markets where there's not going to be a lot of people are going to be smaller markets where people don't want to work, or markets where the work is booming. And so you can find that out. You can go to Law Crossing, which is my site, just by promoting it. You can go to Indeed and simply hired, and when that's simply hired Indeed, and then there's some listed one you got there. Law Crossing, LinkedIn. Just looking at those different cities and seeing what's going on, where there's the most openings is really the smartest thing. Okay, it's another good question. So this is a very helpful question. When an attorney's experiences in one area of law, how is it easy to transition in another area of law? Is it feasible to market oneself as a junior attorney? If you're in one area of law and you want to switch practice areas, that's actually, you can do it, but it's very difficult. So when you switch practice areas, you typically need to you're not going to get hired if you switch practice areas, typically at a firm of your caliber, the one you're working at. The reason is because they can hire people that are working at the same caliber firm that aren't trying to switch practice areas. So if you were a law firm, would you want to hire someone that was in one practice area and had experience there, or would you want to hire someone that's trying to switch practice areas? So law firms are more likely to hire people that are in one practice area and are committed, as opposed to someone that's trying to switch practice areas. I mean, you would do the same thing if you're an attorney. So they're very difficult. So typically law firms are ranked like this. We rank them like this. We rank them 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So a 5 is just incredibly prestigious, top 0.5%. So, there's no top 0.25, whatever, top, 1 in 10,000 attorneys even qualify. But not really likely that anybody's going to get a job there. These are your typical AmLaw 100 law firms, AmLaw 100, 200, 200, and then these are your three firms are going to be mid-size, et cetera. And then your twos are going to be typically primarily work for, these are BCG rankings, individuals that were the same, lesser in client, that's very individual. So the idea is that if you're trying to switch firms, and this is what happens. So what happens is typically you'll have an attorney that is at a 1 or 200 top boutique that's at one of these firms, and so they're trying to move to other firms, switch practice areas. They can do it, but they probably have to go to a 3 firm, right, and switch practice areas. And then if someone is at a 3 firm, mid-sized firm, typically servicing clients, but not like the largest clients, these firms are servicing the giant companies. So these firms, your mid-sized firms, if someone wants to switch practice areas, they either have to move to a less prestigious mid-sized firm, or they would have to go to a 2 firm that also does some work in that practice area. So the idea is if you try to switch to another practice area, depending on how long you've been practicing, it can be very difficult because law firms are businesses, and they're typically going to hire people that are always already in one practice area. And that can help quite a bit. That's what makes it's much more difficult to switch to a firm that's a peer firm than it is to for another one. Doing this one at the top because this looks like an interesting one. This is the most recent question. Okay, well, I worked with a sole practitioner all through law school as a paralegal, and then for 1 year after passing the bar as an attorney. Fortunately, due to COVID, I've had mostly e-discovery and other temp legal positions. Since then, I'm worried that my career is dead in the water. I have a few selling points for my candidacy. I wonder what's the best way to make myself more marketable and move jurisdictions to find work currently. Okay, so I'm going to say a couple of things now that are going to piss people off, and I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings, but I'm not trying to, and I don't want to do that, but I'm going to do it. The first thing is, this is a good question because a lot of people have this question. You could say the question is, should I work as a contract attorney? Should I work as a paralegal while I'm an attorney? All those sorts of things. So the answer is no. So anybody that passes the bar as an attorney should always work as an attorney. You should never or work as an attorney where you're working on things, where you're representing clients, whatever. And that's what you should do. You shouldn't, e-discovery could be a very profitable practice area, and some people will do that as a career. But what I wouldn't certainly recommend anybody that passes the bar. If you pass the bar, you should be an attorney. You should never do something where you're doing temp legal positions or working as a contract attorney. That's insane. No, you do. So why? No, you don't. You work as an attorney. You should always work as an attorney. And again, I'm not trying to help you hurt your feelings, but work as an attorney if you pass the bar. No, I understand legal e-discovery is you always work as an attorney if you pass the bar, not an attorney representing real client. So that's what you do. So you work as an attorney. You don't try to work in something else. Like, why? You represent real clients. If you pass the bar, this up here, pass the bar. Now, if you didn't pass the bar, that's another thing. But you always work as an attorney representing clients. If you pass the bar, it's going to be harder. It's more difficult to represent clients or to get a job in the most competitive client in the market. So Washington, D.C. is an incredibly competitive market. You'd have to be crazy. D.C. is ridiculous. There's so many people, I don't know what the percentage of the population that's attorney, but it's very high. No, you don't have to concentrate on trying to work in the most competitive markets. That's absolutely insane. So you should try to be looking at other markets. And if you're an attorney, you want to represent real clients, you have a couple options. So your option is start your own practice. That's one option. You start your own practice. The other option is you find attorneys that will hire you as an attorney. To find attorneys that will hire you as an attorney. So people are under the impression that they have to do all this type of work. If they don't get a job in a big firm or they don't get a job, they have to work as a contract attorney or do e-discovery. And the answer to that is absolutely freaking not. No one has to work as a contract attorney or do e-discovery or take temp legal positions if they pass the bar. The only thing, and this is advice from Harrison, that's going to change your life if you listen to me, which a lot of people don't, but your job and if you're on this call, you're actually someone that is on it. Like, you know exactly how to do all this. Let me just hear. And you can get a job, but you have to find a job by looking. If you're in DC, look at here, we're in DC. Where's DC in here? Washington, DC. You don't even see it here, right? It's so small. But anyway, so if you want to work as an attorney, you go into practice areas where you find things that you can do as an attorney that other people aren't doing. So you would look for, you could do, just giving you an example, workers' compensation, law firms in Washington, D.C. You can do that. You got all of these different, you'll find all these different law firms that do it, and you'll find all these people. Look at this. There's all these law firms that do it. So you can work as an attorney if you apply to one of these law firms. There's pages and pages of people in DC doing that. They're attorneys. So you can apply to your job, by the way. I just want to be very direct with you. Your job as an attorney is to represent yourself and go out and find positions. That's your job, and find work. If you can't find work, then how are you supposed to find clients? So my advice to you, and this is a wake-up call, is you need to go and look for attorneys to work with that aren't getting applications. You apply to people, you have 20 pages of workers' comp. And what practice areas do? You do personal injury. You do trust and estates. I'm just giving you trust and estates. You do what else? Personal injury, trust, workers' compensation. I'm just telling you the types of positions that you try to find if you pass the bar and you don't think you're good enough to get a job in a big firm. You have to be looking at practice areas where you can get jobs. No one, by the way, no one on this call, if you're an attorney or a law student, no one on this freaking call cannot get a job. There are so many freaking jobs out there, it blow your mind. The places you can work. You do not need to ever work as a contract attorney or be unemployed. You can find jobs in firms to do trust and estates. You can always find workers' compensation jobs. You can always find jobs where you're doing like real estate eviction and things. You can find jobs doing that. You can find jobs where you're doing workers' compensation litigation, where you're doing, the big one would be product liability plaintiffs. You could do that. You could do professional liability plaintiffs. You can do medical malpractice plaintiffs. You can do insurance is the big one. You should be applying to every single freaking firm that does insurance defense to be an attorney. I don't care. They might not pay you a lot, but you're going to get the experience. You should do that. There's so many practice areas. You can apply to construction law firms. You can apply to, what else do we got here? You can apply to firms that do, in terms of bankruptcy, they do labor and employment. You can apply to labor and employment plaintiffs firms. That's a big one. You can apply to insurance defense is huge. You can do insurance plaintiffs. You can do healthcare plaintiffs. Let's see, healthcare litigation plaintiffs. You can do, these are all practice areas for people that didn't go to good law schools and think they're unemployable. You can do family law. That's huge. Anybody here can do family law. You can apply to family law firms. All of these practice areas too, by the way, family law, trust and estate, immigration. I know so many attorneys that came out of law school, like bottom of their class, and they were able to start their own law firms, and now they're like incredibly successful. So family law, you can do mass torts litigation. You can do education plaintiffs. Anybody can do that. You can get into that. You can't do really corporate. You can do bankruptcy, like representing consumers and that sort of thing. You can do, what else? Construction. You can do construction plaintiffs, or maybe just even construction law firms. So there are so many frickin' practice areas where you can get jobs. If you didn't go to a good law school, if you feel like there's no jobs out there, you can do it in Washington, D.C. There's so many of these frickin' practice areas, insurance defense. You can do family law, all forms of plaintiffs work. You can do it, immigration. So again, I'm telling everyone out here, I just want everyone to understand, this is freaking huge. Like, all you need to do, if you feel like you can't get a job, you feel like you didn't go to a good law school, you feel like you're unemployable, you have a bunch of choices. You could actually start law firms. You could do personal injury, trust and estate. You could start law firms doing that. You could go to a workers' compensation law firm. You go to insurance defense law firm. These law firms, by the way, they don't care where you went to law school, most of them. They'll hire you. They just need people to do the work. Family law, you could start your own firm or go to a firm. So these ones with asterisks, I know so many people that even people that left their large law firms and started their own firms. These are all practice areas that you can do regardless of where you went to law school, regardless of what stage of your career you're in. All of these things you can do regardless of where you went to law school, education, plaintiffs, law firms of plaintiffs law. Come on, there's so many freaking things that you can do as an attorney to where you can get jobs in law firms regardless of where you're at. And look at this, pages and pages of, there's 243 results when I do a search for workers' comp. So I'm just showing you there are so many places you can work. You can apply to these firms and just say you want to work there. They don't have to have openings. All these firms, workers' comp, and there, insurance defense, family law, you can apply to all those places and they will hire you. They may not pay a lot of money, but you'll get experience. You can also start these firms with absolutely no experience. You can start a law firm regardless. We just need another question. Next question. DC is ridiculous to get a job. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it okay to say that you're looking because the company is restructuring during a merger? Yes, of course. This is the problem. This is the problem with in-house. A lot of people think going in-house is a great idea, great career move. The problem with going in-house is CEOs change and then they bring in a new legal department. The legal department, the general counsel leaves and the new person comes in. The firm is experiencing financial issues and so they let people go. There's just millions of things that can go wrong with the companies. Yes, it's okay to say whatever you need to say when you're in-house to get a job. People will hire you. You have to, it's fine. But I would just want everyone to say that it's very difficult to go in-house because this kind of stuff happens all the time. I read stories about, I was reading the story yesterday about all these, what do you call these electric car companies that started. You have Rivian and then Fisker. Fisker's getting ready apparently to go out of business. And all these different firms and things where there's issues. And so you just need to be very careful. Companies, when you go in-house, you could lose your job very quickly. You need to be aware that a lot of bad things can happen depending on the firm you go into. Okay, sometimes, despite putting in tremendous effort and showcasing skills, I found myself constantly overlooked for opportunities within my firm. How can attorneys assert themselves and ensure they're not being sidelined for advancement? Okay, so the only way to assert yourself, you don't have to be the best attorney. You don't have to be the most political attorney. The big thing is that law firms are caring about is how many hours are you billing? So there are hours. Are you billing? That's really one of the most important things they care about. So how many hours are you billing? That they're very concerned about that. They want to know how many hours you're billing. So that's, if you bill a lot of hours, they like that. If you do good work, very good work for people, they like that. And if you go above and beyond, they like that. So I remember when I was working on a federal court, there were all these law firms that would come in for different cases. And we were in the courthouse I was in, they represented like Dow Chemical. Dow Chemical would have these cases where they'd be sued by banana farmers in different parts of Central America where they'd sprayed chemicals or something. Anyway, but they had a lot of big cases actually. And so most of the cases were from like attorneys who were local, like in Detroit and stuff. But I always noticed when attorneys came in from big cities like LA or New York and stuff, they always made a point of going into the clerk and flattering her. When they would submit documents and things to the court or to the clerk, they were always like, the presentation was different. They would do things like, if they put a paper clip on stuff, they would put like a Post-it note and wrap it around the things so the paper clip was easier to take off. They would just do all these different things that other attorneys wouldn't do. And when I started practicing law, I also noticed that the best attorneys would also do things that the other attorneys wouldn't do. They would work the hardest hours. They would ask the best questions. They would make sure that they did things better. And how do you do well? You go above and beyond and you tell people you do the best you can for people. I remember when I started my career working for this federal judge, and I was always of the impression that you need to do more than everything as best as you can, and you need to give a little bit extra effort. One example was when I was growing up, I used to do things like shovel snow for my dad and and things. And I remember when I was very young, like I was 10, the Japanese auto companies had overtaken the U.S. by doing such much better work. Their product was better. Things didn't fall apart. There was just so many things that they did that other people didn't do. And so their cars were better. So remember I was shoveling snow for my dad, and then the job was shovel the driveway. I did shovel the driveway, but then he said, you have to do above and beyond in any job you do. I did things like I shoveled paths that go into the house in different ways. I would shovel paths. What else would I do? If there was snow over an Audi, and I would take that down and brush off the hood of his car, the windshield. There was just little things like that you could do extra. And so you can do that as an attorney too. Like the best attorneys will always do extra. They will give more service to their clients. They will do things better than others. And people like that. Another example was, I remember I was working for this judge, and he would come in, he would get there 8:30 on the dot or 8 o'clock in the morning on the dot every day. And I noticed when he got there, he used to go up to it was in a post office, but it was a clerk's office. He used to go up to the clerk's office and grab his mail every day. And then he would also, when he came in, he would put coffee in the coffee maker and start brewing coffee. So I realized that that's what he did. And I wanted to give better service. So I went and I would get his mail in the morning, and I would have the coffee made, like get freshly made, like 8:25. And then I would put the cup out. And so he liked a certain cup, and I would put that cup out for him so he could pour himself coffee. You try to go, and it's a simple explanation, but you try to go above and beyond what people expect of you. If you go above and beyond what people expect of you, then you're going to do better, and you're going to have a better career. If you do extra for your clients, you do extra for the people you're working for, and you don't do average service. You get better service. The thing is, as an associate or whatever, you're working for partners. You're working for people with business, or you're working for senior associates. So you need to impress them. You need to do the best you possibly can for them and make them feel like you respect them and give them good work, because that's what they want to feel like. As an associate, your client is the people that are giving you work. So if you do good work for the people that are giving you work, then they're going to advance you. If you make them money by billing a lot of hours, they're going to advance you. If you do the best work possible, if you go above and beyond, if you show them how much you care, if you anticipate things that they need in advance, then you're going to do better. And this is very important. You are in a law firm when you're a young attorney to advance and to do good work for people and to learn. A lot of attorneys think, oh, I'm getting a job in a law firm just to make money. And if they don't pay me the most, I'm going to leave. No, as a young attorney, your job is to learn a skill. Typically takes about 5 years to become proficient as a litigator, or as a corporate attorney, as a real estate attorney, meaning you will be learning things if you go to a firm for 5 years, and you need to be around other people to learn things to become more proficient. And you should be giving the best service to those people, because those people will be references. They will talk about you in the legal community. They will refer things to business to you. You don't know, but you have to do the best you can. And so very few people do this. I talk to people all the time that don't, and it's a shame. Okay, I've been offered a position in a different legal market. I'm concerned about the cost of living and quality of life compared to where I currently reside. How do I weigh these factors when considering a move? Yeah, so you can look at taxes. Different places have different taxes. You can look at taxes. You can look at quality of life. That's important to you. Quality of life. You can learn. Yeah. So if you don't like those things, then there's no reason to move. The cost of living is too high for you. I'll talk a little about cost of living and quality of life. But the main thing when you're an attorney, depending on what level of attorney you are, your job really is to learn a practice area and take a train. Job is to learn and get trained. So that's really your job as a younger attorney. So that's one job. And then also a job of a new attorney is to get exposed to the most sophisticated work you can, So meaning bigger clients, meaning you'll work on more sophisticated manners of business. So if you do that, that's important. And then also to work with people you like and where there's opportunity. So those are what you should be concerned about as a young attorney, or whatever is when you're moving. So quality of life and cost of living. So that's okay. Sometimes people value the quality of life, and that's a big deal. So typically when attorneys move to are working in smaller markets, there's often a lot more stability with those firms. There's often better hours. It's a better place to work and are happier. So that's important. You want to be happy as opposed to unhappy. I had this experience, was interesting. I had this attorney that I was working with, and and I told the story before, but it's an interesting story. He was unemployed and looking for a job, and he was a member of the Federalist Society, a Republican, and all this stuff. And I got him a job at like this firm in San Francisco that never used a legal recruiter. That was all these Republican in San Francisco, which not like the most normal thing, because San Francisco, like beyond liberal, I don't even know what it is, but it's so far left. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying it's very rare to have it was probably the only Republican firm. So he got this job there, and the job said paid like $200, and then he got a job at a giant firm in New York that paid $350 or whatever, a lot more. And he decided to take this job at this giant firm as opposed to where he'd gotten where this Republican firm. And he went to this giant firm, and he worked 2 years there, getting to work at 8, working till 2 a.m, 6 days a week, and just completely got burned out and left there and never practiced law again or for a few years, and was in horrible shape. So these are things that you need to be aware of when you're looking for a job. You don't need to go to the biggest firm. You need to put yourself in a position where you're going to be happy. Okay, this person's question is, were the attorneys you mentioned transferred to other states already members of that state's bar? Presumably the answer is yes. Want to verify? No, you do not need to be a member of a lot of states' bars. Sometimes you can waive in, depending on how long you've been practicing, but you don't. It's not possible to become a member of a state's bar from that there. And a lot of times law firms will hire you even if you're not a member of the bar. Now, there's some firms where places where it's extremely difficult. Florida, you pretty much need to be a member of the bar. To Florida, California, some of these places really do expect you to be members of the bar when you apply. So you can't do it there. I mean, there's other ones in Delaware and a bunch of them. Let me just take a look at the U.S. map again, just to give you an indication of where they are. U.S. map. Yeah, there's certain places where they expect you to be a member of the bar. Florida is the biggest one, and then California, and then a lot of these other states you can waive into, depending on, you can look, there's a BCG bar reciprocity guide. Sorry. Okay, so this is just an example of what is this one. So look at that, 576,000 views. Those are half the attorneys in the country interested in this. So I'll put this in. Is there a place to put in the chat? There's not, but I would just look at this title, what is bar reciprocity and which states lie right from the bar? That's an important article to review. That will give you an example of what states you can waive into and what states you can't. It's very interesting article. There's charts and things in here, but you can see here, mission on motion, so Alabama, Alaska, all these different things, Connecticut, Colorado, Connecticut. It's not that difficult a lot of times to get into these states, and then you can be admitted on motion, all these things right here. So it's not, and then some of these, you take exam things. So I would look at that chart, but no, it's not like you always need to be admitted in different things. Okay, so someone asked a question about remote jobs. Yeah, there's a lot of remote jobs. You can certainly apply to those, and people can get jobs on remote jobs. Often you don't need to take the bar for that. And it's not, these remote jobs typically you can certainly apply to those. A lot of jobs are actually marked as remote right now, and law firms like that. You can definitely look at remote jobs. And that's smart as well, and you can stay in the city you're in. Let me just see here if there's any other good questions. Okay, no, I think that's about it. Thank you everyone for being on this webinar. I think this is very fun. I do want to do a resume webinar in the next week or two. If you were on this webinar today, I will send a notice out about it to you shortly. And then, yeah. So I certainly appreciate everyone being here. I think this webinar was incredible in terms of what you could have learned if you followed the advice and relocating to multiple markets. And I certainly appreciate everyone being here today. Thank you so much. And I will be here next week again.